This is Annabelle Gauberti and you are listening to Lawfully Creative. My chance to talk with professionals in the creative industries, to hear their stories, what inspires their creation, what decisions change their careers, what relationships influence their work. Today's episode is brought to you by Kithara, our London and Paris-based law firm focused on advising creative industries. Subscribe to our podcast Lawfully Creative or catch up with our original shows on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube and SoundCloud. Hello podcast listeners, this is our first podcast of 2017. Happy New Year! On the 19th of January I caught up with my buddy Carlos Nieto, who was introduced to me by the guys from The Orchard, the music aggregator based in New York City and recently acquired by Sony. Carlos is a very seasoned player in the music industry and relocated a few years ago in France from Miami to, among other things, set up a young and innovative music service company, as it is described on his website KitharaMusique.com, in order to service the needs of right holders in the music industry. Carlos is today an expert in relation to administration services and collection management and improving the transparency or the collection of rights in the neighboring rights and publishing rights spheres. So here is the gist of our meeting and conversation when we caught up at the Prince de Galles Hotel in Paris on the 19th of January. Enjoy! And thank you for listening to Lawfully Creative. Carlos, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Lovely to catch up with you in the new year for my first podcast of 2017. For how long have you been working in the music industry then?
I've been working in the music industry since 1985.
1985?
Yes.
You're a veteran. I was 10.
Oh my God.
I think you explained to me when we caught up at the Midem in Cannes last year that your background was sort of more technical initially as an engineer, and then you moved away from that and went into business affairs, a bit like Richard Kirstein, where she trained to be a clarinetist and then started to do some music production work and things.
Yeah, basically what happened, I was going to the university to study music. That was my first intention. While being in the university, I moved from the music aspect of things into the music and production and engineering side.
Were you in the States?
Yeah.
Which university?
At Boston and at Berklee College of Music.
Okay, fabulous. Well done. While you were there, this is where you saw that you had more interest in sort of more commercial aspects of music, or?
It came about as a bit of a surprise. I was finishing up the music aspect and I didn't know if I should continue on that path or if I should change into another field within the same university, and I was basically looking at my options. The first options were obviously like conducting and music composition. But then one day I went by the Department of Music Production and Engineering.
Okay.
I met with the Dean of the department. Kind of realized that I was always interested in the music production and in the engineering aspects of the making of the albums. And that's how I decided to change, and after talking to him, he advised me on how to proceed, because it was actually basically under the same university. They didn't really have like a program as a master's program or anything like that, so it would be a matter of kind of like starting from scratch. So what they did is that they accepted everything that I had done before, and I went straight into the courses that had to deal with music and production and engineering.
So, and that change, that switch happened when? After 2 or 3 years into your course at Berklee?
After 3 years.
Well, okay. Yeah, it's like almost at bachelor's degree level. And which instruments, musical instruments were you playing?
I was playing flute at the time.
Flute? Yeah. I'm also a flautist.
Oh, really?
Like that?
I was playing flute, and I was getting pretty good. But at the same time, I was not so much into the competition of the other students, and I was getting a little sick of the practicing and rehearsing every day, 5, 4, 6 hours a day. I was a little fatigued with that, so I decided to change, and it was a good change because first I had a lot of fun. And we were we fell into kind of like the experimental time of the university because they were trying to move the program into a certain direction. We had a lot of teachers who were kind of like experimenting into how to evolve the program at the same time. So we were like the second or third group that were there when the program was actually named Music Production and Engineering.
I remember my flute teacher, because I started playing the flute and I was 8, 9 years old, and when I turned around 11 she told me, you know, you could become a professional flautist. I was 11 and I said to her, nah, it's not enough money to be made in that. I prefer to work on the business side of things. And also I did notice that it was a super competitive world and that only the very selected few succeed because there aren't many job placements for
a flute player. No.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. Yeah. You've got Jean-Pierre Rampal, who was obviously very famous in the noughties as a jazz flautist, and some others like Irish flautists usually. But I didn't really see the point of becoming a professional flautist. I mean, and to have a fulfilling career for a long time. I mean, there was Emmanuel Pahu as well, and you know, was like
it's a very difficult field and it's very narrow. What happens?
Exactly. Yeah, that's my point.
You only have a very few. I mean, in an orchestra, you only have like 3 posts. Basically, you have to wait until somebody either moves up or somebody dies before you can take on their position.
I don't think I was that talented anyway. I don't think I was that gifted. I think I started even too late at around 10, 11. So.
Well, that happened to me too. I started late with the flute.
Yeah.
So, and that made it more difficult. You know, if I had started when I was like 6 or 7, you know, but I started when I was like 14.
Yeah.
And that made it really difficult in comparison to a lot of the, you know, schoolmates that I had.
So, how long did you stay at Berkeley in total?
In total, I was there 5 years.
And then what happened?
Then, by a fluke, I ended up in Miami, in Florida. When I got there, it wasn't my intention at the beginning to stay there, but once I got there, I realized I had to stay for a little bit. What I ended up doing was going to a studio called Criteria Recording Studios, which was like a huge complex made out of 5 studios and really famous in the States. They always had like big names recording there. The Bee Gees had recorded there, Eric Clapton, Aretha Franklin. So I interviewed and I started as an intern, because everybody in that area starts as an intern.
Yeah.
So I was an intern for about 3 months, and then little by little I started getting jobs as an assistant engineer.
So that was in a recording studio, or was that in a label?
In a recording studio.
In a recording studio, okay. Yeah. Were you influenced by the, I watched last year, the Muscle Shoals film, documentary, I don't know if you...
I haven't seen it,
you must have heard of Muscle Shoals.
But what's funny is that Muscle Shoals was always kind of compared to Criteria, where I worked in Miami, because they both had the same feel. There were studios that were isolated from the rest of the country. You know, while most of the studios were located in Los Angeles or New York, these 2 studios were located like totally
in Mississippi.
Criteria benefited from some of the same characteristics. They had people who worked not for the studio, but people who did like session work, and they were always kind of like the same group. But not like, you know, contrary to LA and New York, where you have tons of musicians that, you know, even though the group of studio musicians remains small, obviously in Florida it was a lot smaller, and so it was limited to a very few guys.
Was it influenced by a very strongly Cuban music catalog? No, was it like all genres?
No, at the time when I got there, the market for the studio was basically about 80% Anglo music, and there was like a 20% of Latin American music. Nothing to do with Cuba. It was just basically big artists from most signed to major companies who were recording there either because they moved there.
Like Iggy Pop is based in Miami now.
Yeah. But he came after my time.
Yeah.
The ratio was sort of like that. It was more of an American scene, and there were a lot of British that would come to the studio because it was located in Florida and they wanted to be at the beach. But then, slowly but surely, the equation started to change. As the city changed in terms of demography, the clients at the studio changed also. So, well, the clients changed because, as a lot of people, more people started to move into the city, more Latin people, then the studio changed, a lot of the clients changed, basically.
Okay.
And,
so it became more Latin music focused?
Then the ratio would actually, I think at one time it was like 80-20, 80 Latin American recordings, 8% of American clients.
So we were looking at what, the mid-80s when you were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you move into...
Late 90s.
Oh, so you stayed there around 10 years?
Yeah. Oh, more than that. More than that.
15.
Yeah.
Solid. That's solid work experience.
Yeah, because then after becoming an assistant engineer, I started doing sessions, independently, where I became the engineer.
I see.
And, I did a few productions here and there.
You never thought about launching your own label?
No, not at the time.
Okay.
No, I was just basically interested in the recording aspect, and I took a lot of time. A lot of the projects were long projects that lasted like 3 months, 6 months.
So you were freelance?
I was freelance.
So then after Criteria and the 15 years in Miami, what did you do?
I was in Miami up until 2010. I was getting a little tired of the recording scene. I got married, I had kids, and finding myself working until like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was always going against the clock, and I got against the normal current that people live there. And
so you were working like all night until 6?
Yeah.
So they were working, recording at night?
Yeah. Most of the recordings with these artists, they started like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we worked because that's how they work.
Oh, they work in the night?
Yeah.
Because of all the live sessions they've been doing, so they took the...
No. They start late in the afternoon because they feel that in the morning they don't have the same creativity.
Okay.
That's basically it.
And then they jam. They work until all night.
Some worked all night. Some started like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we worked until 10 o'clock at night. Some worked until 2 o'clock in the morning, and every once in a while we would get like a crazy session that would last 3 days straight, no sleep.
Come on.
It was pretty crazy sometimes. I found myself, pretty much living a situation where I was going against everything, against my kids, and
started to have some other priorities.
And I started to think, well, maybe I should change. And while I was thinking about this, I met a friend of mine with whom I worked on the recording side. Mm-hmm. We met in the studio while I was doing a session, and he was doing another session, and we were like in the lobby. We started talking. I asked him, I said, don't you have anything that we could do together? Do you need help in some aspect that we could work together, that I
What was he doing, this guy? Also music engineering?
He was a producer, but he was also a writer.
Okay.
Yeah, he was also a composer, and he was writing a lot of big hits for a lot of Latin American artists. And he was like on his way up. He was, at the time, as a matter of fact, he was signed as a writer for the publishing company of Emilio Estefan, the husband of Gloria Estefan. He was doing well, but he was producing some albums too. When we met and we started talking about this, it was really funny because he said, well, I have this thing that I have all these writers around me and I don't know what to do with them. They send me demos, some of them are people that I know, that I've known for a long time. I know that some of them are really talented, but I don't know what to do with them. He just didn't have the time to deal with it.
Right.
So I told him, I said, well, let's do this. I'll come over to your place and I'll see what you have, and I don't know, well, I'll see what I can do. So I basically went to his place. He had like really tons of demos in all sorts of media, CDs, cassettes, DATs, you name it. And basically,
why was he keeping the whole stuff? Must be so, space consuming.
No, he was keeping it because he was interested in some of the stuff that people were sending him, because some of the stuff is actually pretty good.
Right.
But he just didn't have the time to put it all together or to make any sense out of it.
Right.
And basically, I just went to his place for a few days, and I sat down and I started listening to everything, and I started kind of like making a log of everything that I was listening to and classifying it by genres and by composer and making like MP3 files of everything. Then when everything was really shaping into like a group of composers that obviously we had to filter, and weed out some of the stuff that was not really working. That left a group 35 to 45 writers, some of which have or had lots of songs, 20 plus, and some had like 1 or 2 or 3.
But it was
they were good.
Yeah.
And so what basically I proposed to him was, maybe we can do something with this. Maybe we can put together like some sort of publishing company where we pitch the stuff to the artists that you work with or the people that you know, because they come asking for you, not only as a producer but also as a writer, and you can't write for everybody. You won't have the time, but perhaps we can do like some sort of collaboration where you take some of these songs that are like maybe halfway or 3/4 of the way and you complete them, and that way you pitch them yourself, and I can filter some of the stuff.
You made this with consent of the primary right owners, the people who had written those songs?
At first, no.
Oh my god.
No, because at first all these guys knew him. And they all knew that they had sent him, the material.
Right.
And nothing had really materialized in terms of agreements or in terms of pitching. It was just a matter of like making like a library.
Okay.
Once the library materialized and he realized that he could do something with it, he started talking to some of them, saying, okay, let's do this. You have this song. Let's see if we can work together on this song, and I'll try to pitch it, and if somebody picks it up, then we'll deal with it, because a lot of these people were friends of his, and so there was like a really good relationship with pretty much all of them. But one day, I thought that we need to take this a step higher. We've taken advantage of his reputation.
Mm-hmm.
I put together like a package based on what he had done as a writer and what he could do as a publisher. I went to LA and I met with a few people. Funny enough, I met the head of Famous Music, which was the publishing branch of Paramount Pictures. Very nice guy. I went to his office and it was really strange because I went to his office not really expecting much. He heard that we were doing this through a common friend, and he said, bring them over. Maybe, I'm interested in hearing what they're doing and whatever. So I explained in a meeting that we had what we were doing and what the idea was. I also presented like the package, where I had everything that this guy had done, everything that I had done on my side. The package had like, it was sort of like a resume of what we have been working on. But especially on this guy's side, because he was like the writer and he was like the one who was attracting the artists to record with him, to do the productions and to do the compositions. The head of Paramount, the head of Famous, he said that he was interested and that he would put together like a plan on how we could do it together. So in the end, the plan materialized.
Sorry, that would be to put some of these tracks into films. Is that right? That would be to actually...
No, because the publishing branch that they had was not only for films.
Oh, okay.
No, it was for anything.
Oh, right, okay, so that's a publishing branch.
I'm sure that when it started, it might have started as the branch to deal with the music for films.
Synchronization, yeah.
But then when I met them, they had branched out into a full-blown publishing company where they had writers signed to the company and everything. So basically, the deal materialized into a co-publishing deal, where we were going half and half, and basically they were providing the support. They were providing the lawyers, obviously, and they were providing the royalty management and the licensing and all that. All we had to worry about was the creative side, and so it was really cool. And I worked for a few years. What was really nice is that I had the chance to work with their lawyer, a guy by the name of Kent Clavens, who was magnificent, who had some amazing contracts.
What was his name again?
Kent Clavens. He was in LA. He was based in LA.
LA.
Great. He was a super nice guy. He was very helpful. I thought his contracts were amazing. They were super clear. They were well written. They were fully protected the writer and also the publisher, obviously.
Yeah.
And what happened was that while working with him, obviously I learned a lot just by reading the agreement, just by working with him, exposing ourselves to different situations, because all the writers had different things that they had to deal with. So we were dealing with advances, we were dealing with songs that were written with other people who were from other publishers, so that gave way to a big sort of agreement land where we had agreements of all types.
I'd completely forgotten the fact that you actually were a publisher for some time between the sound engineering experience and the collecting society work. So thanks for refreshing my memory about this. So you really did see quite a lot of sides to the business.
Yeah, I had the chance to look at the business from a different angle. What was exciting was to learn as much as I could from these guys, because these guys were like top pros. And
at Paramount.
Yeah,
Hollywood.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it was Hollywood. You're right. It was Hollywood. But they were super.
Where were they based? Were they based in
They were based in LA. They were based because their offices were like a bit towards Westwood. These are guys that had like a tremendous amount of experience, obviously a lot older than I was at the time. It was a great experience and I learned a lot from them. And that gave way for me to move into a different world, something that I hadn't considered before. And then, so basically when I left...
How long did you do this for, with the co-publishing work with Paramount and this guy, Esteban?
I think it was like 4 years. And then I left. They continued for a while. Deal ended, and then Famous Music got sold, and for millions of dollars at one point.
Esteban sold the catalog?
No. The Famous Music, the catalog of Paramount Pictures, got sold. I guess that's when the deal that we created ended. So in the meantime, I moved to another publisher through a writer that I had met while doing this. He was friends with another publisher. That publisher was looking for somebody to handle his stuff, and I moved to that company.
Still in LA or back in Miami?
No, still in Miami. An independent label of Latin music, mainly from the Dominican Republic. I'd say 90% from the Dominican Republic. I had never been that much into that type of music, and it was quite interesting because it was a big operation. They had a huge catalog of compositions.
What was it called?
It's called J&N Records. Two brothers that own the label, and they've had it for a while. I mean, it's a label that's been in business for like 30-something years.
Was it a label or was it a publishing company, or both?
Both. They were in need of somebody to handle the publishing side, so I took upon it. It worked out to be a great experience too, because then I got to use all that I had learned with these guys from Famous and with this lawyer Ken Clavens and everything. I got the opportunity to use it on my own without supervision. I was totally in control of everything, and obviously there were a lot of things that I had to learn. They had their own royalty calculation software, which I had not done. All the licensing was done by us. All the contracts were done by us. And little by little, when I started, they had somebody who was helping with the agreements. Somebody who worked out of New York, a legal person there. But when I started, this person told me, kind of like on my way out, so whatever you can do on your own, or whatever experience you can gain from what I'm doing, go ahead, because I'm eventually going to leave. So little by little, I started making also library of agreements, of licenses. So next thing I knew, I was handling all their licenses, all their legal agreements.
So you were totally business affairs by then?
Yeah, by then I was totally immersed into the business and legal affairs. It moved also into the artistic side. I was doing both. I was doing the publishing side, but at the same time I was doing all the artist agreements, all the master licenses, all of that.
Yeah, so you're like almost like totally working as a lawyer.
A lot of the time, yes, I was working pretty much as a lawyer because
You didn't train as a lawyer.
no, I never trained as a lawyer.
So all her learn on the job.
Yeah.
I was still back in Miami, and did you work with J and N until 2010?
Yes, but after I moved here to Paris, I still worked for them for another 2 years until 2012.
So what prompted the move to Paris? How did that come about?
I wanted a change, wanted something better for my kids.
Miami was not good anymore?
It depends how you look at it. No, Miami's a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
It's got great beaches and everything, but it's sunny all the time. But in terms of culture, in terms of values that I wanted my kids to have, I needed a change. But this whole thing about France came as a fluke. It came as a surprise.
Well, why did you select Paris?
It wasn't so much that I selected Paris at first. One of the things that I was doing for this company was that I was dealing with other master licenses and all the statements that had to do with the master licenses. And they had a huge catalog of masters. And a lot of those licenses had to deal with companies in Europe. One day, one of the companies, they called me up in regards to one of these licenses. And as I was chatting with one of the guys that I had met him, I asked him, what do you think of me going to Europe and working there, doing something? What comes to mind when I tell you this? And he said, oh, I think this would be wonderful. You could come to France and you can serve as a liaison between us and the companies there, because we know nothing. We're always in the dark. We don't know who does what.
And this guy what was he doing? Was he a licensee?
He was a licensee.
Right, so he had some deals with labels in France, for example, and
he works for a label here.
Right. And so he thought that the guys of his label in France were like not transparent.
No, it wasn't so much that. Well, I guess what he meant at the beginning was that I guess he was referring mainly to Latin music, where he was saying when we want to do something, license a track, pay the right people, we are pretty much in the dark because we were not there, we don't know anybody.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, but the way he put it, he kind of said that it would be really advantageous for me to come to France and do the same thing that I did over there, but kind of like on the opposite side, and help move those catalogs of Latin music here in France.
It's funny you didn't mention London, because the entertainment capital in Europe is London.
It's London, yeah. I took upon his idea and I started doing a little research, but this is within days. I mean, I spoke to him like in March. By April, I kind of had an idea what could be done. And I came to Paris for about 2 weeks to find out if what I had in mind was actually feasible. I figured that something could be done. And at the same time, I was finding out through the French consulate in Miami if there was a way for me to go to France with some sort of a special visa. Because I figured, well, this is kind of like a special talent, if you want to think of it that way. There's got to be something, some sort of visa. And sure enough, when I found out, there was one. And when they sent me what was required to obtain the visa, it became clear that what I had seen in the 2 weeks in Paris was actually matchable to what they were requiring on the visa.
What do you mean by that?
Well, that they were requiring a project, basically.
Okay.
So within the project you had to state, okay, what are you going to do and where are you going to get the money from? So that's what I did. I presented a project.
Like a business plan.
Yeah, it was like a business plan where I said, well, this is, when I get there, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create my company and I'm going to register with all these societies and then I'm going to work, the opposite way. And I started showing also, because since I had access to like statements and stuff from Europe, I started showing those as a means to portray what I was going to do.
I see what you mean, doing it from the other side. Your plan was to stop being on the publishing side, but just making more the whole thing more transparent for licensees and publishers and labels, which had that catalog of Latin America, by basically being on the ground in France and just liaising with the collecting societies and getting all the money in and stuff like that. Is that what you meant? You already had that plan?
Yeah. You know, when I saw the fact that I had to present the business plan, it became clear to me that it would have to be something serious, and there would have to be something where I was sure that there would be some revenue. It wasn't so much leaving the publishing side, because I'm still doing it. It's just that I'm doing it from as a sub-publisher, by representing catalogs, publishing catalogs here in France, these catalogs are from basically the States and some other countries.
Is it all Latin music that now you are in?
What I represent, I would say, is 85% Latin music. Yeah.
Okay. Did you sort of see a niche here in this, especially rising of streaming, income coming through? Did you see that there was a niche, that there was follow the money?
Yeah.
By being this sort of liaison officer between the collecting societies on the ground here, which obviously only speak French and are very understaffed, and also your clients who are most of the time, I suppose, based in either North America or South America, perhaps.
Yeah, that was basically it. I saw the niche.
You saw the niche.
Also because at the time there were a few tracks from the catalogs of people that I knew, you know, back in the States, that were working here. That were actually, that were doing well in the charts. For example, there was a huge search of, for example, bachata music in France.
Yeah.
You know, where you would hear bachata music
and
everywhere.
La lambada as well. When I was a teenager, so corny.
Right away, that showed me that, you know, all that revenue from performance had to be going somewhere. And
so what was happening with it?
Well, some of it was being collected, but a lot of it was just being lost or was being retained because they didn't know who to pay. Because a lot of these people were not even represented here. Right. And what happens is that on the publishing side, yes, you have a portion of it that can leap from country to country. But, you know, it wasn't me who invented the sub-publisher. Sub-publishers have been in business for a long time, and they're in business for a reason. And the reason is that when you have a sub-publisher, you make more money because your songs, your compositions are better represented. Because
when you have a sub-publisher?
Yeah, by all means. So if you rely on your society in your country of origin, all you have control over is the fact that you're going to register the song. Once they're registered, you have no control whatsoever if the songs are being played in other countries. You have no idea. You have no way of matching songs that are being registered with what's being played. So, and that's all the work that as a publisher does. You know, it's not only registering your catalog. First of all, make sure that it's 100% registered. And there's ways of doing that. There's ways of making sure that you have everything registered, not only what's being played or what's the most popular song of your catalog.
You're talking about the soundtracks here, as well as the copyright, the publishing.
Well, when I say register, I mean registering the songs at the society.
Yes.
The compositions. Even when I was in the States and I had some publishers that were doing the work here, I noticed that they were only interested in the tracks that were most popular.
Right.
And which to me has always been an error on the side of a publisher and on the side of us a publisher.
Why?
Because the publishing business is a business of the drop.
Okay.
You know, it's the constant drop.
Tiny incomes,
Yeah. Every once in a while you have something big that makes it, you know, especially in other territory. It's the full catalog what really gives you the edge over just doing it yourself, let's say.
All the time.
Because that way, if you make sure that all your catalog is registered, if the sub-publisher is doing the work of identifying unclaimed tracks on your behalf, not only by knowing the writers, you have to know the performer. You can't just search by songs by using the writer. You're not going to find anything, because most of the reports that come from the entities that pay the societies here in Europe, which is a difference that exists between Europe and the States, because in the States, all the societies collect is performance.
Yes.
They don't collect mechanical rights.
Yeah.
Here in Europe, they collect both. But basically, with the sub-publisher, that's what happens. The society is here; they collect everything. So a lot of the reports that come from the internet stores, iTunes, Amazon, Deezer, Spotify, whatever, they come with the artists.
I see. Oh yes, of course, it's not going to be catalogued by the songwriter.
So a lot of the times, the society has no clue whatsoever how to match.
But don't they use a sort of number of a track? Like they find a number to identify a track?
No.
As you come to France and you are now representing as a sub-publisher, but also as a manager of all these copyright publishing rights, I am under the impression that you are also registering locally all those songs.
Yes.
Yes. So of course they are registered, say for example with CSAC or BMI or
ASCAP in the
ASCAP in the US, which is the main collecting society. But you make a point of registering all these songs and musical compositions in France as well with SESEM.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's what happens exactly. You have to make sure that when you sign a sub-publishing deal that even if they have 10,000 works, you have to make sure that all 10,000 works are registered. And there's ways of knowing if the 10,000 works have been registered.
Right.
And that, because that's what gives the edge of the drop. That's what's going to bring, the steady income. And then you have to move into the process of really recognizing the tracks. Of recognizing the songs by writer, by artist, by...
Do you use the... do you remember I introduced you to that lady from BMAT, which I think is exactly that. They're based in Spain,
Yeah, but BMAT, it's a great company because they're doing a service to everybody.
And I think it's free. For most people.
But even better is that they're reaching deals with the societies.
Yes,
in order to match what they have as content with what's being reported to the society.
And I think also they have a sort of identifying tool where you can identify.
Well, they have a lot of algorithms to actually match the music, and they have to do with the wavelength of the song, how the song looks, and it's a really complicated software that they use, but it's doing wonders to a lot of people because
Is it useful for you?
I don't know yet.
You don't know?
I don't know yet. It was actually, it's been implemented on the master side recently here in France.
I see.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start seeing the results probably in a year and a half.
Miki Tsunis from The Orchard speaks very highly of BMAT. So.
Yeah, because they're perfect for
on
that.
The neighboring right side, though.
Yeah, because they're perfect for that.
Yeah.
The Orchard being a digital distributor, they have access to all the audio.
Yes.
So they can provide all of that to BMAP, and BMAP can actually match it with what's being played in each country. It's a wonderful tool.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you said you have some music publisher deals. You have also some deals where you are a sort of service provider, I suppose, where you are basically collecting monies from French collecting societies on the neighboring right side and on the publishing side on behalf of artists, of the talent.
The two sides that are most important to the equation of the work that I'm doing are the sub-publishing side and the representation of the neighboring rights. I do have a whole bunch of labels that I represent. That's working out well. It's a lot of work.
I'm sure you must be so good at quantitative and data aggregation.
Yeah, the work with because basically that all has to do is with metadata.
Exactly.
And
do you have some software that you use?
Yeah.
You build them?
Yeah. I have a software that actually it's not a software made out for that.
Okay.
But since I know the software well, I have manipulated the software to work on that side.
Oh, fantastic.
But also it takes a lot of knowledge of Excel. Funny enough, but it takes because sometimes you have to get like formulas and the formulas get quite complicated in order to recognize the tracks. So there's quite a bit of work that involves a bit of knowledge of Windows. On the neighboring right side, it's a whole different beast and a whole different approach from the publishing side, because quite a few problems. One of the problems is that you're dealing with a lot of people who are claiming tracks that don't belong to them. That's one of the first hurdles that you encounter. Neighboring rights are practically unknown for people in the United States, because since the United States, they don't pay neighboring rights, and they don't have
internet play.
They have sound exchange, but sound exchange is basically restricted to internet radio.
Having said that, though, it's the collecting society for neighboring rights which collects the most money per year.
Well, but the size of the country is,
but I think it's $100 million. I mean, it was $100 million 2 years ago, and that was the biggest amount of collecting, neighboring rights.
But I'm sure if you look at it from the perspective of for example, the size of France,
right,
as opposed to the States, I think they collect more here.
Oh, you mean like on a proportional?
Yeah, on a proportional level. Yeah. In France, is that they collect a lot, but they don't distribute all, because a lot of the money. No, because a lot of the money they collect, they can't distribute it because the countries where the recordings were made or where the owners of the recordings are from, they're not part of what is called the Rome Convention.
What do they do with that pool of money?
They just hold it. They hold it on reserves forever and ever. Not forever and ever, but they hold it for a few years. And after 5 years, they dispose of it.
How do you dispose of money? They
use it for
something else.
They use it for other purposes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
No, but the purposes are actually quite honorable. They use them to fund cultural activities. They use it to support the members of the societies here. They use it to finance projects, whether it's the budget for an album, the budget for a video, the budget for a tour. But it's a shame that countries, for example, like the US, don't belong to the Rome Convention, because they could be making so much money. They could be recouping so much money.
I think with the US, there's only Iran, and I think even China is part of the Rome Convention. So I think there's only Iran or something like another country like that, weird country which is not part of the Rome Convention. So I agree with you, it's really crazy. Although I don't think with the new Trump administration it's ever going to happen.
No, I don't think so either.
Where do you see the biggest area of growth in your business, in this business of sub-publishing and collecting neighboring rights and publishing rights on behalf of the labels, the publishers?
I don't really see a growth per se. What I see is a different type of income, a different type of revenue. For example, I see the revenue on the publishing side increasing.
Really? From where? From what?
From performance. From public performance, from radio, from television, but it's not really that is growing, let's say, to surpass sales. It's just that sales have gone down. Now we're getting performance from other venues where we weren't getting them before.
I see. Like what, for example?
Well, like Spotify and Deezer and iTunes.
Even for publishers, because they're always
Music.
whining that they don't get enough money from the digital service providers, but nonetheless.
They don't get enough. But nonetheless, it's growing because the growth of the listening.
Yeah, I just got my Spotify membership 2 months ago. I'm really happy with it. I got all these. I mean, I don't work for Spotify, but all these playlists and stuff. It's really cool. I really enjoy it. It's very interactive.
It's very interactive. It's user friendly.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful tool. It's a pleasure to have all the music at your disposal to listen to. But really, unfortunately, they don't really. It doesn't really pay that much.
Yeah.
And,
well, they're still not turning a profit. Actually, they're still in loss. I was just reading an article today. Netflix, the video streaming company, is doing okay. They're now in turning a profit, but still Spotify is still not.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So on the streaming side, actually, I mean, like on the neighboring rights side, do you see a real increase with all this income coming from streaming for
No, because the streaming is not part of the neighboring rights. You only get neighboring rights.
Okay, fine. So you like collected by the collecting societies.
No. Nothing gets collected on the neighboring rights side that has to do with streaming.
Yeah, no, they don't want to get into it. Well, usually it's a direct deal with the labels and Spotify or Deezer or.
Yeah, well, maybe, but at least on the neighboring rights side, then nobody is collecting anything from Deezer or Spotify. I mean, you're basically collecting is from radios in whatever shape or form, and you're collecting from sales.
Yeah, I was invited at Mama 2 years ago. I think you were actually in the audience. And Jérôme Roger, the CEO, I think, of the French Collecting Society, SPPF, so for neighboring rights. While we were doing basically a panel on neighboring rights, he said to me from the outset, "Don't mention streaming." He's like, this is the biggest part of the neighboring rights, streaming, like in terms of dollars and euros which are connected. Is that but we don't deal with it. And this panel is sponsored by SPPF. So, well, actually, the streaming income is neighboring rights, but it's just that the collecting societies, neighboring right collecting societies, are not dealing with this because the labels are entering into direct agreements with the digital service providers. Collecting societies are not seeing that income.
Sure, they have agreements because they have to provide the content.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's sure. That is actually affecting the neighboring rights collection. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's why, for example, for big indie labels, they created the likes of Merlin to pull their efforts together, so that Merlin would negotiate an agreement directly with the DSPs.
Yeah.
If you're also working on collecting those neighboring rights, where is the income coming from mostly? Is it from TV, radio, for the neighboring rights?
The biggest bulk of it comes from public performance.
Public performance.
Yeah. And then after that, you get like what they call the equitable remuneration private copying.
Private copying, yes.
Yeah, which is the tax that they get from the companies that manufacture media to record.
That's really crazy because, I mean, why would you do that today? I mean, like we don't...
What?
I mean, who is doing copie privée? Private copying. I'm not using my cassettes anymore.
No, but that involves a lot of things. It involves computers, hard drives.
10 years ago, I would do that. Copy some music on my hard drive. Maybe I might have. But now, with the streaming, why would I spend, I don't know how many hours making copies?
That doesn't deal with the fact that an individual person is making copies. It's basically it's under the presumption that if they sell media that allows people to record music, that media should be taxed based on the fact that people can record music onto it. And that includes all types of CD media, like recordable CDs, recordable DVDs, USB.
Any encouraging words for 2017 for creatives in the music industry?
I think basically all the creators should concentrate, at least people who have record companies, they need to concentrate on information.
What do you mean?
Metadata. On making sure that all the tracks have the correct information, that you don't assign different ISRC codes to the same recording just because you're putting it on a compilation. Make sure that you use always the same information because that's information these days is crucial to get revenue. It's really
in the long
crucial.
Term.
No, and in the short run, in the short term too.
In any case.
In any case, that's one of the things that they need to do.
Are you saying that a lot of right owners are not rigorous enough on this? They're just a bit slacking a bit?
They're lacking big time. Yeah, they don't have the. First of all, they think that the labor of actually assigning information to what they own should be made by an intern or by a person who has very limited knowledge of the business, and it's actually totally the opposite. It should be done by somebody who knows what the information is going to be used for. because if not, all that does is create errors, and the errors get paid in lack of revenue.
Yeah. Thing is, it's very time consuming, isn't it?
Well, not really. If you do it from the very beginning, it's not.
Yeah. Okay,
If
one,
you wait,
one album by one album.
Yeah, if you
Fair
wait
enough.
until you have like a huge catalog to start assigning information and make you sure, that can take a long time. But if you're doing it on a regular basis, as you start, sure, that shouldn't take that long.
Anything else that you'd like to add for the music business in 2017?
I just keep creating.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Keep creating stuff so that we can all
benefit from it.
So that we can all work. I mean, the most important these days is really to keep the creativity going, because there are many aspects in the business that are driving composers, writers, artists away from the business. And that's really a shame, because it has become really difficult for them as artists, as writers, as composers to make money. That drives people away from the work.
Instead, they go to work in Silicon Valley or London for the tech companies.
Yeah, I guess the advice is that there are ways to shape your revenue in the music business. It's just not the same as it used to be before, and you have to kind of like get updated with the ways of doing it so that you as an artist can keep doing what you do best, which is creating.
Thank you for listening to our podcast Lawfully Creative, produced by Crefavi Studios. Subscribe to our podcast or catch up with our original shows on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube and SoundCloud.